Welcome to Make It Happen Monday, which happens here every Monday, funny enough, at 9 a.m, where I get the honour of talking to people and about people who are making it happen. And today is no different. I have the lovely Marion Wade joining us today from Clean Learning. But a little bit about her. This is the lady who transformed my life. So all of those people that know me, that says you can hear me on your shoulder saying, what would you like to have happen? This is the wonderful lady that introduced me to those questions and transformed the way that I understood myself. So no further ado, let's bring Marion on and say hi.
Hi,
Marion.
Cheryl. Lovely to see you.
Thank you so much. So the subject today that we're going to be talking about is planning for your best retirement, possible retirement, isn't it? That's a subject we were doing. So just tell us a little bit more about, let me just start again. Take a deep breath. Is there anything else you'd like anybody to know about you before we begin?
No, I think, obviously I run a company which is all about clean language and the questions you were talking about. And you were one of the very first students, going back some years now. And I've just continued to do that all along, as you know. Yeah.
Well, I had no idea that I was one of the first, because at the time I just felt she was so experienced. She must have been doing it for about 10 years already. So that's a bit of new information for me then, Marion. I didn't know that today. So please tell us, what is it that you'd like to make happen that we're going to talk about today on this show?
Well, I have got two things I'd like to talk about. One is that we've started a new set of programs called Structures for Living. And one of those programs is planning for your best possible retirement, which I'm going to be doing with you in February time.
Yeah, very excited.
And so the Structures for Living was an idea I had when I was walking the dog about a year ago. It just struck me that we use clean language a lot in groups, and we teach a lot of people how to use it in groups. And why weren't we running some groups using it? And so, and somehow the whole name Structures for Living came to me, and the whole idea about how it would be where people like you and me who get interested in a topic go and do some research in books, on the internet, and by doing some clean interviewing with people to discover the kind of breadth and width of a topic that people might be interested in, and then formulating those ideas into a kind of like a group coaching program. So that's what we're going to do with the retirement one. It's a 6-week program, and we'll be covering kind of what is retirement for you and how would you like it to be, what are the issues around it, who you are when you're retired, and things like that. And obviously, I wouldn't say our age because I'm 10 years older than you, but at this kind of age of life, it is something that we do tend to think about quite a bit, I think.
Definitely. Yeah. And I mean, one of the questions I'd ask you is where the idea for retirement came from. But as you say, we have been both thinking about it. We did say we would confess our ages. So I'm 54 and you are?
I'm 64, yes.
Yeah. And those of you saw the previous interview from last week, you'll know that I was talking about living with the end in mind, and we're talking about death. And I know, I was just saying to Marion off air, that I hadn't really thought about retirement because my mum died before she retired, and so did Mark's dad. But it's been really interesting doing the research with you and actually doing the interviews and reading on the subject. So it was like I had unknowingly not really planned for it. So what have you noticed in having the conversations, the interviews, and just being yourself thinking about retirement now? What's the difference those conversations have made for you?
Well, one of them is that I'm not the only one who's kind of ambivalent towards the idea of retirement. I remember going to Portland in Oregon. I was doing some training there, and somebody said, "Oh, come and look at my new office." And he took us in his car to show us his new office. And he'd taken out a lease on a brand new office. And he was about 78, I would say. And I was like, oh my goodness. I got the impression that people in America didn't retire, but I realize that's the wrong impression. But I was quite impressed that somebody of that age could be starting something new. And it got me thinking, what is all this about when you get to 60 something, you stop work? And is that something that I would want to do? And along with some of the people I've interviewed, I have this kind of, oh yeah, well, it would be nice to take longer walks with the dog and see the family more often, and all those kinds of things that you kind of associate with retirement. And I think I'd be bored. I love what I already do. And so why would you want to stop? And I go between those two things quite a lot. And I think you do too.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I'm 54 in the next couple of days, and I've worked since I was 14. And so there was a part of me that was kind of, so I said this, I must have been thinking about a time when I didn't have to work. That was my definition of retirement. But it's only been thinking about it, I've realised being self-employed, because I always said, I'll always work. I'll work till I'm 80. Because as long as I can remember people's words, I'll be clean coaching. That's, as long as I can do the work, I'll do it. But what I hadn't really thought about until we had these conversations, I'm self-employed and my company has overheads. So there's a certain minimum I have to earn to keep the company running. So actually, I was going along a bit in denial that being self-employed, I could just work whenever I wanted to. I was forgetting that I needed public liability insurances. I need the software that we use. I need to keep my training up to date. There was lots of things that I hadn't thought about it. But the big one for me actually is Mark really wants to retire early, because he's doing something that he's always supported the family. He's always been the security, the financial security, and he really does want to retire from that. He's a quite stressful position. It's quite a stressful job, and he'd really like not to do it. And I realised I was probably trying to persuade him not to, because I didn't want him to retire and be around annoying me. So that's been a bit of a revelation for both of us. And as you know, we both got this book. I purchased this book, the Retirement of Psychology Reinvented. And the big thing that stood out for me was that the reasons for working, it asks you that question, are you a workaholic? And one of them, they said, leisure low interested, i.e. those who are bored and do nothing. They work to keep themselves occupied. And I thought, I think I can tick that box. So what's been interesting is Mark's got Airfix, he's got Lego, so he's practicing doing hobbies and things that he's going to have something to do. And I've started painting and doing crocheting, because I've realised I'm just trying on for size. Do I work because I really love it, or do I work because I don't know how not to work? And so that's what these discussions and these interviews have really brought up for me and made me sort of more playful with it. And definitely the people I've interviewed, probably the one that stands out the most, it was really great. There was one lady interviewed who said it felt like it was the last phase of her life, and it was all sort of it's downhill. People's like God's waiting room, like all these really doomy, gloomy things. And just by having some time to talk it through, she said, I've realised it's the opportunity to have the series finale. So it was just lovely seeing people change their perspective and get new ideas of how you can think about it, feel about it, but more importantly, plan for it. Make a conscious decision whether you want it or you don't want it, and how you want it to be.
Sure. And I think one of the things about doing that in a group, because, obviously that lady got a lot from being just interviewed, in terms of with clean language, you get to have attention on your ideas in a way that you don't normally get from someone else, and just thinking things through can make a big difference. But I think if you do that in a group and you hear about other people's ideas as well as thinking through your own ideas, then that is kind of multiplied. And I think a group that stays together for 6 weeks thinking about those things will gain a massive amount in terms of not just ideas, but really solidifying their own ideas and working out what they actually want to have happen.
Yeah,
And I can't
absolutely.
wait. I can't wait to find out who's going to come and what we'll together explore and discover.
Yeah. Well, because having it over 6 weeks as well, people can go off and have conversations with family members, can't they? And they bring back a pool of other information. I remember one lady we talked to who works with a lot of people who are retired. And she said the big message they say is don't leave it for retirement. You know, so there was all that kind of juicy information comes back into the pool for people to hear and to make decisions. Not to mention that we've got the tools and resources to share with people if they've got to have difficult conversations, if it's not comfortable talking to somebody about maybe they want one thing and somebody else wants something different from the retirement plan. That's also something that's potentially could come up for people, and we've got that space to provide people a safe environment to get clarity about what they want, but also maybe some ideas about how you might have those conversations going forward. And I know that I couldn't have those conversations with Mark if I hadn't had these tools and the community that I get to talk to, and because I couldn't get the clarity separate from us. I needed to do that on my own to be able to come back and have better conversations, to be able to admit, oh, actually, I think I'm trying to talk you out of retirement because of how it's going to impact me, rather than it's the best thing for you to do. So is there anything else you'd like people to know about the planning? Well, I suppose what I should do, because I've made these fancy banners to go at the bottom, let's just pop those across the bottom right now. So this is the date. So it's planning for your best possible retirement, starting Tuesday the 20th. It's 6 sessions, and we'll be meeting from 2 o'clock till 3:30, and it's with Marion and I. And if you want to book, here is the link as well. Is there anything else you'd like anybody to know about this particular program, Marion?
No, only that we'll have done all of our thinking beforehand, and so when we're there with whoever comes, that time is for them.
Absolutely.
We may pop in the odd idea here and there, but what this is about is helping people to find out about themselves and find out about each other, and to cross-fertilize in the group. And no, I think we've pretty much covered that.
Yeah.
And
there is that it's a precious opportunity to get to listen to yourself and other people talking about the same subject, and to be okay with the fact that people think about it differently. It's the honouring space that I've really valued along the way with the journey. So without any further ado, I'm going to say goodbye to Marion, and as always I'm going to finish the show off with our clean setup questions to help you think about what you're going to do now that you know what you know from today's show. So thank you very much for joining me today, Marion. I'll be back with you shortly.
Okay.
So without any further ado, that brings our show today to the end. So just think about what you know now, the subject today being retirement. What would you like to have happen? And for that to happen, how do you need to be? What kind of you is that you? And for you to be like that, and for that to happen, what kind of resource and support might you need? And if you are struggling, don't forget that as the Listening Detective, I'm here to help you work out what you'd like to have happen and the confidence to ask for it. Have a great week, and I'll see you again next Monday. Speak to you soon.